Hey everyone, this is the Stay Great Podcast, episode 9, and I am your host, the Tim Chappell. George woke up the next morning feeling tired, anxious, and stressed as usual. Every day he wondered what else was going to go wrong, but at least today he knew he wouldn't have car problems. "Do you want me to drive today?" his wife asked. "I do have time." "No, it's okay," he answered. "I'll take the bus. It's not that bad, except for the driver." "What's wrong with the driver?" she asked. "Long story, I'll tell you later," he said as he put on his sneakers for his trek to the bus stop. Then his mood turned even more sour as he thought about seeing the bus driver who had insulted him. "Choose wisely," soap opera struck in his head. Who does she think she was talking to? He shook his head and then turned his attention towards the sneakers because it had become painfully obvious that he wasn't able to untie his shoes. The laces were tied in 20 different knots, and he knew full well that his kids had been playing in his closet again. He threw his shoes against the wall, breathed a big huff, and just sat in painful silence. More silence. A minute later, he looked into the mirror above his dresser and saw himself as he heard a voice from his own conscience saying, "You." The bus driver was talking to you. You are the one with the failing marriage. You are the one who is about to get fired, who now doesn't even have a car to drive to work and can't even put on your own shoes. You are the one living a soap opera. The realization hit him unexpectedly. He couldn't disagree with Joy. She was right. His life and career had hit a rock bottom. Even his boss and biggest supporter and mentor had sat in his office yesterday and told him he couldn't vouch for him anymore. "I can't carry you anymore," his boss said. "I don't want to be carried," George replied. "But that's what I've been doing. Everyone is asking me, 'What happened to George?' And I'm saying, 'I don't know, but he'll get it together.' Well, now they are looking at me saying he better get it together, or else you both will be gone. I love you, George, like a son, but I can't let you bring me down, too. I've worked too hard for this. I have 2 kids in college." "I will get it together," George declared. "We'll see," his boss said. "As my old football coach used to say, we don't talk this game, we play it. So I hope to see action soon, because if you don't get it together, then we both know what has to happen." Fired was the word George never thought he would hear, and now he was hearing it all too frequently in the same sentence with his name. "I need to try to turn this around today," he thought. How? I have no idea. And that is an excerpt from John Gordon's book, The Energy Bus. John Gordon is an author and motivational speaker that works with many professional teams and individual athletes, successful organizations, Fortune 500 companies. You can follow him at John Gordon 11. That's John Gordon and then the number 1, then the number 1 again, making 11. He has all these books that I recommend for people who maybe haven't gotten into reading yet. John writes these nice fables that have a bunch of principles in them. The chapters are pretty short, and if you wanted to, you could probably read each of his books all in a day. So that's pretty encouraging. The chapters are short. The books are normally about less than 200 pages. They're in small format, so it's all good. The excerpt I just read to you, for example, was 2 pages, and that was the entire chapter. So if maybe you set a goal of reading a chapter in a book every day, pick up one of John's books and you can accomplish that goal in about 5 to 10 minutes of your day. So easy win right there. Now let's talk about the part that I just read. So have you, the one listening here, have you ever been in a low point in your life like George was in this story? You may be on the verge of being fired, your marriage or your relationship may not be so great, or maybe your car has broken down and you have to take the bus to work like George does. And I think it's funny. Have you ever been down or sad at a low point potentially, and someone wants to offer you the solution of, have you tried just not being sad? That kind of pisses me off. I get where they're coming from, and their heart is in the right place, but this book has some principles and some tactics to apply that can actually help you overcome some of those low points in life. And I believe that it all does start with the energy that you give off that stems from your attitude. So let's look at this next section here really quick, where George is talking to the bus driver, Joy, which is very clever. John likes to, in his writing, throw in these little interesting names and, little clever ways of integrating that. So energy, it's called the energy bus, and the name of the bus driver is Joy. I just think that's kind of funny, but let's go back to the book here for just a second. I feel imprisoned by my paycheck and responsibilities. So to answer your question, no, I really don't feel like I have a choice. The real truth is that instead of living, I feel like I'm dying every day. Maybe I'll be one of those 9 a.m. Monday morning people, George said. There's no doubt about it, Joy countered. If you continue down this poor me road, you are well on your way to being a Monday 9 a.m. fatality. So what you got to do now, George, is take the wheel and change direction. You may not have felt like you had a choice in the past, but starting now, you will realize that it's your greatest gift. And once you reclaim your power, everything, and I mean everything, will begin to change. No one can choose your attitude but you, George. No one else can choose your energy, George. In fact, smile for me right now, sugar. George didn't budge. I'm not asking you, George. Now smile. So he did, knowing she was one woman he didn't want to see get mad. See, George, you chose to smile, and just by doing that one thing, you changed your energy. A smile changes the way that you feel, the way that you think, and how you interact with others. The energy you fuel the ride of your life with is entirely up to you. And as the driver, you are the one who must also choose your vision of where you want to go. You have the best seat and the best view of your life, so it's up to you. You gotta have vision. So let me ask you, do you know where you want to go, George? George sat up straight, looked out the window, and noticed they were about a mile from his office building. He didn't have a clue where he wanted to go. He just knew he didn't want to be where he was anymore. Joy had known it before George even thought it. A man with vision has a certain look in his eye and walk in his step. He walks like he knows where he is going and why he is going there, and George didn't walk like that. I know we're almost at your office, Joy said, but I want you to read something before you get off. It's something that inspired me to call this the energy bus. She reached into her bag next to her and pulled out a children's book with a graphical picture of a bus on the cover with the words energy bus on it. It's a children's book, George said, very frustrated as he wondered why in the world she would want him to read a children's book right now. I know. That's what I love about it. You see, life is simple, but in all our stuff we make it complicated and become blinded to the simple truths. But it's the simplest lessons in life that are often the most profound and meaningful. So don't scoff at a children's book or in simple rules I share with you, because one of the most important things you could ever realize is that the closer you get to truth, the simpler and more powerful the lessons become. Yes, the rules are simple, but as you will realize, they mean everything. So read, George. Read. So that phrase, life is simple. Now, instead, I mentioned the friend of yours that may have told you, just try not being sad, and how it's just too surface level for me to really change anything. But a good place to start would be for you to smile and think about your vision. That is something that you can control and something relatively easy to do, right? So now the bit more difficult part of that is the vision part. So ask yourself, do you have a vision for your life? Whether you are at a high point right now in life or a low point in your life, do you have a vision for your life? Without the vision in your life, you won't know which direction to even drive your metaphorical bus, as it talks about here in this book. So I'd encourage you to take some time today and think about your vision for your life. What does your job look like? Should you change career paths? Can you work on your relationships and make them better? What's the vision for your life? A deep question that I encourage you to think about today. A very important question. So maybe not even just take one day, take a few days to think about it. Going to go back to the book here for a little bit. Danny pulled out rule number 2 on a piece of paper, which said, rule number 2, desire, vision, and focus move your bus in the right direction. Joy turned around, looking at George, and said, "It's all about focus, George. Without focus, buildings don't get built, paintings don't get painted, and energy gets scattered. You told us what you want. You shared your vision. Now I want to help you turn that vision into reality, and it all starts with your thoughts." "How are my thoughts going to make my work and my marriage better?" George asked in a skeptical tone. "The energy of thought, as we discussed," Joy answered confidently. "Each day, I want you to focus on your vision for 10 minutes and see yourself creating everything you wrote down on that paper. You see, George, there is a law of energy." "It's called the law of attraction," Marty shouted from the back of the bus. "That's right, the law of attraction," Joy continued. "And it says that the more we focus on something, the more we think about something, the more it shows up in our lives. For instance, I bet every time you buy a new car, you start seeing it everywhere on the road." George nodded, knowing that this was true. "Ever wonder why that is?" Joy asked rhetorically. But before George could even answer, Joy said, "Because thoughts are magnetic. What we think about, we attract. What we think about expands and grows. What we put our energy and attention on starts to show up more in our life. And the energy we project through our thoughts is the energy we receive. That's why so many people have had the experience of thinking of a friend or relative, and then they call on the phone." Marty confirmed, "The phenomenon actually has a scientific name. It's called telephone telepathy," he proudly shared, showing the research on his computer. Joy continued, "There is an energy to thought, so it's important that you spend your time thinking about what you do want rather than what you don't want. You've got to focus. Do you know those people, George, who all they do is complain? They focus on what they don't want, don't like, and don't have." "Of course I do," George answered, thinking of himself that he was one of them. "Well, I tell those people that when you complain, you get more things to complain about. So no more complaining and negativity. Okay, George?" "I don't allow complaining on my bus because if you are complaining, you can't be thinking about or creating what you do want. Plus, your complaining also ruins everybody else's ride. I have a saying that I used to say on my school bus to the kids, and now I even say it to the adult passengers as well, because often they need to hear it more than the kids. It goes like this: we are winners, not whiners." With that, the bus erupted in laughter and everybody started chanting, "We're winners, not whiners." So I want you to stop thinking about what you don't want and start focusing your energy on your vision and what you do want. Make sense, George? Joy asked. "The more you see it, the more likely it will happen," Marty said from the back of the bus as he walked towards George to show him the research on visualization and Olympic athletes. "All the Olympic athletes use it because there's so much research that shows it works," Marty said. "Behind every gold medal are hours of visualizing their best performance or race. So why shouldn't dudes like you and I use it to create a phenomenal life and success?" Marty knew this better than anyone else. He was one of those guys who never had any luck until Joy showed him to create his own luck by projecting lucky energy. He was a surfer who dabbled in the internet business, and he had just started a new company after selling his previous venture for several $1,000,000. Now he only expects good fortune, and that's what he gets. We live in an energy field of dreams, Joy cheered. If you build it in your mind, focus on seeing it, and take action, the success will come. They were definitely making George think. His life was falling apart, and maybe it was because of his negativity and his wife had told him about so many times. He thought of himself at work and home and saw himself complaining a lot. But would changing these thoughts right now really make such a difference, he wondered? Would focusing on his vision really help attract it? He was an athlete, and he had heard of athletes using visualization before, but that's sports, and this is life. A lot of negativity and problems had been accumulating for a long time, and it had taken him a while to reach this crisis. Field of dreams, right, he thought skeptically. Instead, I'm building a big pile of you-know-what. Could he really turn it around that easily? But on the other hand, he didn't have a good reason not to try it. At this point, he would try anything if it meant it would save his job and his marriage. With a big product launch next Friday for the NRG 2000, this was a time for dreams because he had nothing else. Some good points in there, like we're winners, not whiners, and this law of attraction, or what one of the passengers on the bus calls the energy field of dreams, what Joy actually calls, not one of the passengers, but Joy refers to this energy field of dreams. I first off like the phrase, the we're winners, not whiners, because it's how you got to approach life. Be a winner and quit complaining about things. You know, you got to take actions to change your situations. Yeah, it may be hard to change things in your life. It may be hard as hell, but I do know one thing, complaining or whining, it just isn't going to change anything for your life. That's all I'm really going to say on that, about that. You shouldn't be complaining and you shouldn't be whining. There's also another great book called The No Complaining Rule. It's another great book that I would recommend. Now, this energy field of dreams concept is a good one. It says here in the book, we live in an energy field of dreams, Joy cheered. If you build it in your mind, focus on seeing it, and take action, the success will come. So, some personal application. How often are you building your dream or your vision in your mind? And then focusing in on that in your mind, and then taking action. Because all of that is necessary to do before the success will come, like it says in this book. And listen, I've been holding to this concept for a long time when it comes to a development that I'm working on here in my hometown, where this process has taken about 3 years now. I've got the vision, check that. I focus on seeing it, check. I'm taking action, check. And now I am just patiently or impatiently waiting. But the success I know will eventually come. I know it. I'm just not always a patient person. That's one of my personal flaws. One day that success will come in my life. And I know if you follow the same process with your vision or your dream, I know it's going to happen for you as well. I'm not sure who said this, but at one point I heard a speaker that said, you want to be successful? It only takes 2 steps. So we're kind of going back to that simple principle, right? But he had said, you want to be successful? It only takes 2 steps. Get started and don't quit. So that's that simple principle. And, like it says here, build it in your mind, visualize it, focus on seeing it, and then take the action. That success will come. A pretty simple rule, but very powerful indeed. And so there's one last part that I want to talk about today. And hey, get the book. I'm only reading about 5% of it. So order it or pick it up at the bookstore if that's even a thing anymore, if people go into bookstores. This last part I'm going to share with you is about the one great golf shot theory. And it's something that you and I can put into practice every day or every night. Again, I'm going to read the entire chapter here because it's only 2 pages long, so that's fantastic. That night, while watching television, George acted on an inspired impulse to go grab his bag and pull out the energy book Marty had given him. As he looked through it, one section really caught his attention. It was about golf, a sport he loved to play, but rarely had time for. The book talked about how after people play a round of golf, they usually don't think about all the bad shots they made, but rather always remember and focus on the one great shot they had that day. The thought and feeling they get when thinking about this shot makes them want to play again and again. This is why so many people get addicted to golf. The book then contrasted this with life and how people often go to bed thinking about all the things that went wrong, when instead they should apply the one great golf shot theory to their life and think about the one great thing that happened that day. The one great call, meeting, or sale. The one great conversation or interaction. The one great success that will inspire them to look forward to creating more successes tomorrow. This, the book said, will inspire people to get addicted to life. Well, it worked because George was inspired. He had an idea, walked into his children's bedroom, and asked each one of them to tell them their successes of the day. He explained that it could be something great that had happened to them that day or something they were proud of. The children lit up and smiled as they recalled their successes, and George knew this would be their new nightly ritual. Then he took a walk around the block with his dog and thought about his own success that day. His boss had come up to him and said, "There's something different about you, George. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." It's amazing how positive energy works, George thought. Whether you have it or don't, people notice. Later on that night, he lay his head on the pillow. George thought about sharing the one great golf shot theory with his team, because if there was any group of people on the planet who needed to learn to focus more on the positive instead of the negative, it was them. Now, this was something I used to actually apply in my life, where I would ask others what was something great that happened to them today. And to be honest, I've kind of fallen off of that path and haven't done that in a while, but that's why you should go back and reread books and see if you highlight them or take notes about some of these parts, because this could be a ritual of yours or just a habit of asking people, hey, what's something great that happened to you this week or even today? But anyway, I think it's cool that George asks his kids that, ask them something great that happened to them today or something that they're proud of. That gets other people to focus on the positive things in life. And then, hey, you ask yourself that every night, what's something great that happened to me today? Along the same lines, I suppose, before I go to bed, I think about what my wins were for the day. Like, did I get my body moving, or did I read or learn something new today? Those things are all wins, and I'm proud of myself for accomplishing those things. Those are just some good thoughts to have right before bed instead of focusing on anything negative. I promise you that if you think more about the positive instead of the negative, your life will absolutely change and improve for the better. You don't have to believe me. You can think I'm crazy or I'm a whack job. You can say that, Tim is all sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, and ice cream all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can acknowledge negative things that happen in your life, but you should focus on the positive aspects even more than those negative aspects, especially before bed. It's not good to be going to bed with some bad thoughts in your head. I know it's sometimes hard for those demons to be pushed out of your mind, but think about and focus on the positive stuff. It is definitely a war in your mind, but I know that you can absolutely win that war. So that's just a little bit of John Gordon's book, The Energy Bus. He's written a good number of books like this that are all in the form of a fable that tell a story, but they are incredibly insightful. So I recommend any of his books by John Gordon. They're pretty inexpensive too, and you can order a couple of them at a time. I mean, you could probably finish 3 to 5 of his books in 1 week if you really wanted to. even if you're not much of a reader, honestly. He does a good job with these books, in my opinion. So great job, John. That's it for this episode today. Of course, you can connect with us. We are on X at the SG Podcast. You can find these episodes on Facebook, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or on Spotify. We appreciate that. Give us a like or leave us a 5-star review. My mom always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. We enjoy recording this and producing these episodes so that you, the listener, can get some value out of the episodes. And then, hey, you should share it. Share the episode with somebody so that they can get the message out there and impact somebody else's life in a positive way and add some value to them, just like what we're doing with you. I am on Facebook, X, and Instagram at the Tim Chappell. And of course, thanks to Black Comet for producing this episode. My producer is working hard behind the scenes to make these happen for me and, more importantly, for you. So I'm incredibly thankful for that. Now, here's the key takeaway, I think, from The Energy Bus by John Gordon. Remember that you are the driver of your bus. So drive with purpose and enjoy the ride. Stay great and take care of each other.